This is a great question, and it depends really on what you might mean by not the best. So when we decide at Cambridge who to invite for interview, and by the way, across all subjects, the average proportion of candidates we interview is about 70%. What we're trying to do is not to shortlist the very, very best applicants at that point on paper, but rather to deselect those applicants who, even with a really fantastic performance at interview, a kind of 10 out of 10, unfortunately, they just wouldn't be successful because their paper file score, everything else about them apart from the interview is sadly just not up to a standard where they would be competitive in our view. Now, if you're referring to our pre-registration required admissions assessments, so things like the ESAT, the TMUA or TMUA, the UCAT, the LNAT, and so on, then the results in those assessments are taken into account when we make those deselection decisions. And it's important for me to stress that if you are performing in roughly the bottom 25% of test takers in that particular test for the subject you've applied for that year at Cambridge, then it is very unlikely that you'd end up with an offer, and also very unlikely, I'm afraid, that you would be invited to interview. There are no absolute cutoffs in the process, but in general, if you are performing in that bottom 25% or so, then in that sense of the admissions test performance being not the best, it is unlikely that you would unfortunately have the opportunity at interview to make up for that slightly worse performance. However, beyond that, you're absolutely right. Yes, the Cambridge admissions process is holistic. Successful applicants sometimes have done absolutely fantastically well in every element, but that's quite rare. Usually applicants will have done really well in one and maybe slightly less good, still well in another, and sometimes they might have done really not so well in one, but really well in lots of other ones, and that's very common. And if we're inviting you to interview, there is a chance that you will end up with an offer. So if you are performing maybe in the bottom 50% of those admissions tests, but then you come and do fantastically well at interview, yes, absolutely. In that sense, your interview performance could make up for an admissions test performance that is not the best.